Learning workshop, and she's here to talk about the future of e-learning.
Okay. Thanks, Kyle. Sorry it took some time to set things up. How are you guys doing? Good, good. This is really weird. The stage is so far away from you guys. So, okay. So first of all, you guys hear me okay? It's clear. Davey, good for the recording. I have 2 mics, so it feels very interesting. So good morning. I am here to talk about the future of e-learning. This way. Okay, so I just want to get a sense of how many of you guys have taken an e-learning course, whether it's onboarding, Coursera, Udacity, at university, Khan Academy, yeah? Okay, so about half of you. So could you kind of, in a word or two, could you, oh, by the way, I like my presentation really interactive, so please feel free to shout and contribute. It's very boring for me to just talking to myself, so please, and it's Sunday morning, guys, so I don't want to be the one that's just talking to you, so please be as interactive as you can. So in a word or two, could you kind of share with us what e-learning is to you? What's your impression? What's your experience? What is it like? Anyone? Yes. Convenience. Okay. Anytime, anywhere. Okay, that's good. Yes.
Self-motivated.
Self-motivated. Okay, that's good. Anybody else?
Sometimes you cannot find
Some topics?
You cannot find in local school.
So as in, it's difficult to source the information, like if you want to learn a topic, you don't know where to go, is that, or you don't think it's available? Is that what you're asking, what you're saying?
Yeah, for example, if I want to learn software architecture, there's no program.
Okay.
For that.
I see, but, and you can't find it online?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying you can find it locally, so you would go online to look for a topic to learn about it, yeah? Okay, that's good. Anybody else? Okay, so what do you think some of the criticism of e-learning is? What are some things that, okay.
I think they can get dated maybe because they're doing videos or whatever, and they're not necessarily including the latest.
That's right, because it's expensive and it takes time to produce a lot of the material, right? So it gets dated because people just put it out there and they don't necessarily update it often. That's great. Yes?
It's like less interactive, so you lose motivation, like writers.
So motivation is a factor, right? Because you're on your own and you have to be self-directed. Yeah, that's a good one. At the back? Cannot really ask questions. Yeah, that's good. It's getting there with the technology, but yes, please. These are good ideas. So anybody else? Any other criticism or other negative points about e-learning? No? Yeah? Yes. Depending
upon what kind of e-learning you're doing.
Yeah.
Harder to, even if there's a chat forum or anything, it's difficult to communicate which problem or where you're stuck at or where you're trying to get to. Instead of that, people would rather go for human interactions than e-learning.
Yes, so it's sort of back to the feedback. You're not sure whether you get it correct answers or how to gauge their quality at the back, and then to you, yes.
It's very prescriptive.
Yeah.
In a class with somebody you can interact with, you can go in lots of different directions based on the class interest. But
right.
If you're in an online course, it's all laid out for you ahead of time.
Okay, prescriptive, so kind of one size fits all, right? Like it regardless of your levels, your experience, everything is sort of just from start to finish is the same for everyone. Yes.
Mine was similar, which is less interactions with the group. So
less interaction with the group. Yes, that's right. These are really good points. I mean, you guys kind of cover everything that I was going to share with you, and these are a very common criticism in a field of research in terms of like how how effective is e-learning? I love that you guys started with like a lot of positive things, so that's good. I am very critical in the field because I've been in it for 20 years, and I've seen everything from a correspondence model with shipping material to nowadays is a lot more interactions and a lot more different embedded with different technologies. But yeah, you guys basically talk about most of that. A sense of isolation is another one. You felt like you're just doing it on your own and you don't have any interaction. So that's fine. But at the same time, do you know the e-learning market is really huge globally? Can you read this okay? I don't know how well you can read it, but this is according to the current analysis, like at 2019, it's around $200 billion USD. So that's the market worth. That's how much money it's generating as an e-learning market globally, right? And it's growing both in the academic. So this is academic and corporate learning all together for e-learning. And the corporate market is actually growing faster. It's growing about 14% a year in terms of growth rate. And it's projected in 2023 to be $240 billion. So it's a huge market. It's not going anywhere. But just because it's not going anywhere doesn't mean it's going to stay the way it is. So I want to talk to you guys today a little bit about like what does the future look like if we continue to develop and continue to access e-learning material. And we talk about all these issues about the sense of isolation, that one size fits all, it's very rigid, it's very prescriptive. It's not always, in terms of content, it's not always current. Like what can we do about it? And what are some of the emerging techs that can help with mitigating some of these issues? So in the interest of time, I want to talk about 3 different emerging techs. So, and hopefully you guys have something to say about that too. The first one, virtual reality and augmented reality. So can you guys tell me the difference between the two? Any?
Augmented is layered on reality.
Right.
VR, you are in a different.
Immersive, yeah. Like in the other world. VR, it's you add a layer to your existing world. That's and I think somebody at the back was also going to.
I think David's got it.
Okay. So it just I'm open to different definitions of these 2 techs. So you guys have a good understanding about the two technologies. So I think 2017 was the year that the maturity was there. It finally arrived. So the reason I said that, I don't know if you guys agree, but last year, the total sales at Q3 of VR headset reached over 1 million set in terms of shipments. So that was the first time they have that number of VR headsets shipped out. And at the same time, I also start seeing, when I go to Learning Technology Showcase and trade shows, there are a lot more VR and AR vendors last year. And it was the first time that I see that many vendors show up in different showcases. At the same time, it also, I want to showcase in Vancouver, we actually are we're the 2nd biggest VR hub in the world. Did you guys know that? Like this infographic came out last year, and I was really surprised to see it. We have like over 200 companies doing all kind of VR stuff and AR stuff. So I don't know, are you guys familiar with the community here at all? Yes? No? Maybe? Ish? A little bit? Yeah, I would definitely encourage you to take part in some of the activities. It's not all education related, but they are. As you know, the industry, it's hugely driven by entertainment and gaming. And what are we famous for here? We came from a gaming tradition. We came from an entertainment tradition here. So this market, like this city, it's perfect for going into VR and AR. Question?
Which is number 1?
I'm sorry?
Which one's number 1?
I have no idea. I suspect it's either in the US somewhere, or maybe London. So US definitely has a lot of activities, I think, probably San Francisco. I don't know, anybody knows about who's the number one? So I would, thanks for that question, I would get back and try to find out about that. But I was really surprised because Vancouver is not, huge on tech in general. I think we're getting there, but VL seems to be leading, leading the development effort. And it's really interesting because 3 years ago, we only have about 15 companies. So this developed over the time frame of 3 years. That's impressive. Okay, so in the learning world, last year was also the first year I've seen the ELearning Guild. It's one of the professional organizations for e-learning based in the US. They put on an e-learning virtual reality / augmented reality conference called Realities 360. And it was the first time I've seen in the learning world that actually they put in a serious effort in showcasing any VR, AR tech for learning purpose. So they continue that this year as well in this space. So I want to showcase a couple of really cool projects here. The first one, it's called VerShow Speech. Have anybody experienced, or you do? So what's your experience like? So what is it, first of all?
Well, I've pretty much experienced it with the same device that you've showcased here. I might be wrong because it was a long time ago. But it is like basically, is it like speech command or?
It's for soft skill training. So if you are trying to learn about job interview skills.
It's a personality development thing, I think, from what I did with
Okay.
like an app.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but they also do it for language learning. I might be wrong. Apps out there where they help you learn languages.
Not this one, but I would love to hear about your experience with the other one. So this is for workplace learning for soft skills. So basically, if you want to learn how to do a better presentations, how do you conduct job interviews, how do you network professionally, how do you give talks. So it's all the soft skill development for workplace learning. It's free to download the app. I downloaded it on my iPhone, and I brought my little cheapo Google Cardboard with me, so you can test it out after if you wanted to try it out. It's really quite fun. They charge a subscription for the actual courses. I think it's $180 USD that you can actually take it, and you can get a certificate of completion. But what I think is really cool is, there's a lot of free things that you can access right away, and it would give you like videos of how to give a better speech, different tips, and you can practice it, and you can sort of record your presentation, and it would sit in the platform. And it's a blended approach. So they also have regular e-learning courses, but they also have the VL component of how do you learn to present better. But what I think is even cooler is that I think that's $180 for the basic model. If you pay like another $50 or $80, you can access your voice analysis, and you can get a coach to sort of give you feedback. So you can actually record your presentation and on that platform, and you can they can provide some feedback, which I think somebody to their points about you don't get interaction, you don't get feedback in e-learning. So I think this company trying to mitigate that by providing that function. It's really cool, so I encourage to try it out and come talk to me after if you wanted to test it. The other project I really want to showcase is an augmented reality project called Engineers Mate. This was funded in the UK on workplace learning and how do you encourage people to learn about a piece of engineering equipment at work. So the challenge is oftentimes when you do these workplace learning, you get one instructor with like 10 or 15 students, and stand around a piece of equipment and you talk about the functions and features, and the instructor often don't have time to get around to everyone, right, to sort of explain things. So this is cool in a way that you can use a handheld device, and you can overlay in front of a piece of equipment, whatever the industry is, and it would use an AI detection algorithm to immediately identify what equipment it is, and then also give you like some steps that you can go through in terms of understanding the procedures of how to operate, in terms of watching videos to further understand how do you operate that. So yes.
I don't know if you're gonna get to that later,
Yeah.
but I've seen a very, very interesting application of this. So my father works with a German instrumentation company.
Yeah.
I don't want to take any names. So what they do is
Yeah.
they have a small piece of paper, and it's basically used for sales pitch. They'll put it in front of the client, and then they have an app on their phone where if you just hover it over that specific QR code, you'll be able to see a picture of the instrument.
Yes.
And then you can zoom in and go inside the instrument, see all the specifications there. So they essentially just need to take that piece of paper for making the pitch instead of having to carry the huge instrument everywhere. So
That's right.
that's
So
amazing.
I know there's so many innovative. Thanks for sharing that. There's so many innovative approaches, and there's so many ideas that I think that's amazing, because you're able to access something that you don't normally easily have access to, and I think that's the beauty of this technology. And there's so many, the past couple years, when I look at any funding for learning technologies, VR and AR, it's basically top the chart always. Like there's a huge trend in leveraging that technology to come up with innovative learning approaches. So as I mentioned before, I want to talk about the promises and the threats. What are the pros and cons of using that for learning? I want to hear you guys thoughts on that. I know you have something to say. So what do you think are some of the great things and some of the not so great things? Davey?
Psychosis-inducing horror games, or something that causes people to have mental breakdowns.
Wow, I wasn't expecting that to be the first comment, but thank you. do you guys agree? No, that's great. Do you have any references to that? Because Black Mirror. Okay, do you have any actual evidence-based research reference to it?
There's a lot of horror games being developed, and that is their goal.
Yeah, that's right.
And that line.
Actually, the reason I asked about the evidence base is that's actually research that said your brain cannot differentiate when you're in a virtual reality and when you're in actual reality, right? So you have to be really mindful of the effect that you have on people. For example, there's a lot of applications on treating phobia. If you're afraid of heights, for example, there is a VR program that would simulate different levels of heights that put you in. But the challenge is you have to monitor it very carefully, because it would have the opposite effect. If people freak out, they think they're going to fall, and it might push them over the edge. So that is something that's really a big deal right now in terms of research. But on the flip side of things, the positive side of VR is also it enhanced a sense of presence. So there's a research on job interviews using VR headset to simulate the experience. People reported and say they felt more focused, that there's more of that sense of presence for them. So think about when we talk about e-learning and we talk about it's really hard to focus, I get distracted easily. So I think using a VR headset, because it blocks off everything else, right? So you don't hear, you don't get distracted, you don't get any peripheral anything in the outside world. So think about implication for maybe people that have ADHD. Would that help them? Would that help them to be more on task? So by the way, the projects and ideas I have, I would put it in the references at the end, so or feel free to reach out to me if you want to know more about these projects and ideas. So there's research on the pros of that as well. Yes.
I would just say that there are some positive experiences, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
simulate using VR. Yes, horror stories are bad. But I personally had an experience where did a VR simulation of what it feels like to be an astronaut out in space, and then there's a whole simulation. You walk outside the shuttle and you're in space and you are just rotating and revolving, and it came with a warning that this might cause motion sickness.
Yeah.
I was like, no, this is not going to do that. But I was so absolutely wrong, because it did induce motion sickness for me. It was that powerful and really well done.
That's right, and the hardware is an issue too, right? I think that the cheaper it is, the more likely you'll get sick. I mean, there is a difference using a Google Cardboard and something that's a little bit more expensive. And also, I found that when I was using the Google Cardboard, I'm like, my hands get tired of holding it, and then my eyes get crossed slightly after I'm there for some time. So, like, it's very tiring. So, like, the debate in the education world is, well, how long should you be in it to be effective, right? It doesn't help to be in that world all day long. It's just not effective because you get desensitized. So a good use is to be very targeted. If you have an important concept you want to communicate and teach, get your learners to go in, experience that, and get out. It's not something meant for entire day of learning. The other interesting challenge is, hardware is clearly an issue. And the other challenge is I don't find, like, the quality of the content is all over the place, right? So there's no quality assurance. You don't know what is good, what it's not. There's a lot of development. Like we saw in Vancouver, there's 200 companies doing that. So there's a rush of development effort, but it's really, and it's very expensive to produce. A company in Victoria called Lamasu, they said they don't consider anything under 100K. So if you're an organization investing in VR for learning, you have to think about the development cost, the headsets, plus maintenance and scalability. Like, it's expensive too. Once you develop something, it doesn't, you have to, like, we talk about, like, things are dated quickly, so you need to update your content. So that's another challenge. Anything else? Any thoughts or comments on? I mean, these are really good ideas, and really, you guys clearly are very familiar with the text and understand the pros and cons. So I'd love to hear more about that. Any other points before we move on, Davey?
For the promises?
Sure. Oh, you can go dark if you like.
Oh, no. I think there's a bigger, brighter side.
Sure.
Like any sort of creation.
Yeah.
So whether you're programming, like the human brain actually would work better if we were to, like, visually see how the code is represented.
Yeah.
There's design, 3D modeling, like you can actually get in there and look at your designs. That would be huge.
Mm-hmm.
Any sort of creation would benefit from.
Yeah, I always think, have you watched the movie Inception?
Yeah.
I felt like VR could have so much fun designing that kind of world. So I'm still waiting for more innovation happening in this space. Thanks for that. So the second one, I know you guys are familiar with artificial intelligence and machine learning. There's a lot of confusion in the e-learning world, what the difference is between the two. I think every e-learning platform last year and this year are claiming to be AI-enabled platforms. And I always like to challenge them and say, are you really? Or are you just using a machine learning algorithm and call it AI? There are many applications in the learning world, but the two that I think it's interesting to talk about are content curation and adaptive or personalized learning. So what do I mean by content curation? What do you guys think? Yes?
Just identifying relevant topics for publishing.
Yes. So why is that useful?
Well, you want to attract leads for your company, for your audience.
Yep, and also because, like you said, content is expensive to create and maintain, right? If you're developing everything in-house, that's a lot of resources that you need to put into. And there's a lot of, honestly, good content out there that we can actually, make use of and share. So that's content curation. And I want to talk a little bit about that. There's a UK-based company called LearnAmp. I don't know if you guys heard of them. They brand themselves as a learning engagement platform. So you heard of LMS, Learning Management System, which is traditionally where you host all your online courses. For those of you that are at university or been to universities, I think the common LMS are Moodle, Canvas, Blackboard, sounds familiar. Desire to Learn, the Canadian success story, yay. So now we're getting into a second or the third wave of learning platform innovation, which is focusing on engagement. So I recently spoke to them and had a chance to look at a demo of this product. It's similar to what you were saying. So yeah, to refresh this content from elsewhere, and they call it Netflix meets Spotify, and that's the learning platform. So I really like that idea because they manually curate the content, but they also combine it with a machine learning algorithm. So it's both. There's both the human touch and the machine touch. I think that's nice because machine learning algorithm doesn't always get it right. I think it's nice that human has input into the system. I want to show you. So you can see that you get LearnAmp recommends, but then you can also QA your own called induction or other soft skills as a collections of material. But at the same time, you can also edit the recommendations. So I don't know how many of you get annoyed when, say, Netflix gives you a bunch of movies that you don't enjoy, or when you go to Amazon and recommend books to you that actually are not quite there because you purchase a gift for your friend and now suddenly it's recommending all the similar items that you actually bought it for somebody else. So I think giving learner control of the learning and to say, this is what I want, you're right, you're spot on, or not quite. It's very powerful. And this is the direction that's heading. Not every organization, every company gets it, but I think slowly it's getting there. Any comments or questions on content curation? Do you think this is a good idea? Would you use it? Yes? Absolutely, yeah. No, they are very. It's a newish idea. Yes.
I'm just sort of curious. Like, is there any sort of automated content creation based on like world events or kind of the
automatic content creation?
Books, though. They do that for books.
Yeah.
Like they started doing it. I remember they did like a demo chapter of what Harry Potter would have been like if it was automated content creation. But I don't know if they're doing it like for sales pitches and on the marketing side of things.
Yeah.
But they're doing it in the publishing world. They're definitely looking into that idea. Yeah. That could be like where we're taking it next, depending on dynamically what the readers would enjoy or what they like to read.
Well, learning, you have to be careful, right? Because you have to understand the levels, you have to understand people's prior experiences and able to create content that way. And I think, I haven't seen anything yet, but that's an interesting concept.
Yeah, I'm sort of thinking about more the needs of the future as opposed to the past, right?
Yeah.
So.
I haven't seen any I could be wrong, and if you guys see anything like that, I'd love to know. So good point. So the next thing, I think somebody was talking about, I think it's the guy with the Apollo shirt. You were saying about, yes, sorry, I can't see your names. So Apollo. Talk about e-learning could be very rigid, and it could be just the same for everyone. So there's definitely a trend now to think about personalized or adaptive learning. It's not new. Like this came from about 20 years of research. It's just that the technology hasn't matured enough to do anything interesting until now. It used to be more based on the recommender system. I don't know if you're familiar with that field. Like, it doesn't have to be in education, but recommender, like, you like this, you might also like that kind of thing, right? That's been around for 20 years or so. So now the technology gets to the point where it's interesting to actually make things adaptive. So what's commonly being used? This is a company called Zoomy. So they do personalized learning through learning paths. So instead of everybody accessing your learning material or activities the same way, starting at the same starting and end point, depending on various attributes. It could be your job role, it could be your experience, it could be competencies that you declared or competencies that you tested, and based on your test scores, it would recommend one learning path over the other. There are many attributes you can take. It could be based on your demographic information, it could be based on your geographical information. Personalization and adaptive learning, it's not just in learning, as you have seen. There are many other personalization in other products and services. But this is interesting because it's just starting in the learning world as well. So promises and threats. What do you think AI and machine learning it's good for learning, and what do you think it's terrible for? I know David's gonna have a terrible. No? You're not gonna start with dark?
No, I'll start with good.
Okay.
Content creation.
Uh-huh.
So in the book Life 3.0 by Max Tegmark,
yes.
He goes on about how this AI starts off with creating content similar to Netflix, and because it can do it so fast and iterate and make all these different types of shows, and that's eventually how it takes over the world. But
and that's good?
It is good.
Okay.
We need AI overlords.
Okay. That's yay. Okay, any other comments or thoughts on what is it good for and what is it not so great? Come on.
It concerns me that his view of it being good that AI or that there's AI overlords is concerning.
Yeah, Davey is a concern. Yes, we know that. Oh, it's funny because anytime I mention AI, people are like, oh, you mean like you're doing Skynet stuff? I think that's I think a lot of the threat came from the general public's perception of what AI is, and it doesn't help with TV shows like Black Mirror. It's never good. So yeah, you had something to say?
I can say a negative too. Like it could just make some sort of a virus that we don't have any cure for. And
that's right.
Just wipe out our population. And then the AIs can just take over the planet entirely.
Great. I think I sort of open a can of worms here. Any other comments or feedback that's less doom and gloom? Any other thoughts? What is good about personalized learning is it's helpful when you're online and you don't get feedback, right? You don't get any customization, as opposed to in a classroom. When I'm teaching in a classroom, I can adapt based on how you guys are, like even giving a talk, based on how, if you guys are nodding or paying attention, I can push more content, or if you guys are falling asleep, maybe I have to take another approach. That is not possible online, but personalized learning helps with that, especially to scale up when you have a lot of students. You can still personalize the content, right? What is not so great, other than AI taking over the world, is that I think in terms of ethics. Sorry?
Threatening of jobs. Threatening of jobs.
Tell me more about that.
Well, one example. I mean, I don't believe that it just the human society is not the best at change, and so AI I think just enforces change at a more rapid rate than society is usually willing to bear. But like one example would be autonomous cars. Obviously, the concept of having taxi drivers or truckers, a lot of those jobs are going to go away in like 20 years or so. And so, but obviously, AI in other areas are improving our lives and taking over these rudimentary issues that are currently held by, or like hamburger flippers. Like they started to have hamburger flippers in fast food chains.
Yeah.
You know, and so it just means that we need to, you know, be able to do more creative things and not have to have jobs and more rudimentary things.
Yes, that's a whole other talk.
I have so much to say to that.
I know. I think we should create a whole other workshop just to, I mean, I do too. I mean, that's another topic I talk so much about. But in the interest of time, I acknowledge the point. And I think you're right. I think we should start thinking more urgently about that. I think we should start thinking how we can, you know, we train people on those things. Yes.
Not to derail the subject, but I also think that the counterpoint to that is throughout history, we constantly like delete and create new jobs. We have new industries, we make it more efficient.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean the Industrial Revolution has proven that, you know, the 1800s.
Right, and
I fully believe that, you know, it just forces us to change, and you know, and people don't whine and complain about it, but eventually we absorb it, and now we're consuming more. We're more productive, basically.
yeah.
You know.
Well, one argument is that we haven't changed quite as rapidly as it was before. So, like back in the days when horses and buggies turned into vehicles, we had time to adapt to that. And now, like I was saying, like VR wasn't even a thing in learning 2 years ago, and now it's everywhere. So how are we going to catch up? Like, are we able to train people fast enough? Are we able to, you know, help people to settle in a new job when they're being displaced? So these are things to think about. But to get back to the topic here, in terms of AI, I think the challenges are there's no really ethical principles or guidelines to sort of govern how this is being applied. I know Google issued one, and I am very cynical. I think they issued one because they were being criticized by weaponizing AI, and therefore the legal department got together and issued something. I think SAP also has a ethics guideline, as well as either Microsoft or one of the other tech giants, right? They also have ethics guidelines. But like in terms of countries, like I think Canada, we just started to think about that. I think there's a consultation process going on right now. UK actually has a really good one. I would encourage you to look into that. Very well thought out. The UN is working on one right now. IEEE also has one that just published on the ethics of AI, but like there's like no conversation that cuts across countries, right? So there's not like a standardized best practices and guidelines. The other thing with AI and machine learning is it makes assumptions about you, right? What if the assumptions are wrong? It makes recommendations. It's like when I talk about when Amazon make recommendation on books, but it's based on that one gift you purchase. What if that is your entire learning? What if that learning, especially at work, it's connected to your performance and it goes into your performance reviews? Like if you're not doing so well and they make recommendation for you to do other things and you still don't do well, like what are the implications on that, right? And that's not been talked about, especially in workplace learning, what the consequences are. So these are some things that we should, you know, seriously think about. So this third one is linked to AI and machine learning as well. It's called learning analytics. I don't know if you guys heard of that as a field. The definition, this came from the academic world some years ago. It's an educational application of web analytics aimed at learner profiling, a process of gathering and analyzing details of individual students' interaction on online learning activities.
That is slightly scary, I have to say.
I know, it is a mouthful. Basically, it's about making use of big data for learning, right? Why is it scary?
Mostly because I don't know if it's just the official definition of it, but it feels like the emotional aspect of it would be either missing or hard to incorporate if you're doing individual profiling.
Interesting. I like to unpack more about the emotional aspect of things. Do you think that or students would feel like you're watching over them all the time?
I feel like a lot of as a concept, even in our tech world or any kind of businesses that we're running. So to be able to transfer that and take it to the next level of automating it would be, I'm not saying impossible, science, anything is possible, but it would be difficult and it's a little far-fetched as well.
I agree, and we can, I have a point I want to go back with that shortly. My point about learning analytics as a field is it's not very well defined, like depending on who you go to, like it could mean different things. Primarily, people are making use of big data for understanding learners and learning, right? That's the key point. It's a very academic-driven field, but there's an increased interest in applying the theories into practices. So the past few years that you can see more effort in going into that. It came from a variety of fields, business intelligence, education data mining, the combination of these ideas. In the business world, it's slightly different. It's focusing on return on investment. It focuses on KPI. It focuses on metrics primarily derived from LMS. So if you use LMS, there's always some sort of metrics that in like a learner dashboard to show how long you log into your courses, what's your progress, are you passing or failing, a course. So we talk about emotions. Have you guys heard about sentiment analysis, just in general, as a thing? Yeah? Some nodding. What is it? How do you describe that? Go on.
You can use a library or something to evaluate a text and to try to find out if it's saying good things or bad things or good things.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So you talk about emotions, right? To sort of get a sense of, it came from more like public opinions, right? And in terms of the, like, especially in politics, but this is being applied to learning to say, are students, how are the learners, what do they feel in terms of, this material? Do they find it difficult? Is it challenging? Do they love it? Is it do they enjoy it? So it's to take a pulse, if you will. The idea is that if they are struggling, for example, as an instructor or as a content designer, you can maybe change it. Maybe change the content, maybe you can provide more support to the students, maybe you could go talk to them, maybe you can get them out of there and put them into something else, right? So this is about prevention and intervention of the learners and their learning trajectory. So there's, you can kind of, I just want to give you an example of that. You can see it's based on what I've commented either in the course directly or if they're in a discussion forum or some sort of social space that they're able to talk about, like the course is too long, complicated, cannot open. So these are kind of negative, experiences or negative sentiment. What is missing is actually there should be like a neutral column because there's sometimes it's things that they just feel like, nah, it's okay. I don't. It's not great. It's not awful, but it's kind of in the middle. So traditionally, it's sort of coded manually. Now there's of course, a huge effort in using machine learning to sort of grab the sentiment, put it in a model, predict the outcomes, and see based on the sentiments, are students able to be successful or are they struggling? So it's used as a predictive modeling technique in learning. The other one is, you heard of Design to Learn. It's a learning management platform that came out of Waterloo. It's called D2L sometimes, and they recently rebranded called Brightspace now. They have a Performance Plus module where this is where if you talk about scary, I found this to be a concern because it will actually put you in a risk quadrant based on, say, your number of access to a system, how long you stay in a system, what things you clicked on, because now learning management system can measure a lot of things, right? It would say, where do you click? From this click, where did you go? And from that click, did you get the content and score, a passing score or failing score. And how do you compare to the other learners in the same course? And based on that, they put you in, are you at risk? Here's another one you can see. It can say this person is at risk. Predicted grade is 36%. It's predicted grade, mind you, it's not your actual performance, right? So there's some implications there too. What if you're just having a tough week? What if you are busy and you decided to ignore this until the very end? And we all know, like, as learners, sometimes, things happen and you can still perform really well at the end. But, you go through ups and downs. And what if you are down and the system catches that down and just say, oh, you're going to be terrible at the end, right? So it doesn't take, into account the variation. It might over time, but it's not perfect. Yes?
So I have a question.
Sure.
I don't know as much
Yeah.
about the field I'm still
Yeah.
learning. So do you think that our mapping of human emotions
Yeah.
in our brain itself and the activity is up to, is it at par with the applications that we're rolling out?
No. I think it's the attempts, but even from have you heard of affective computing as a field? Yeah. So there's some research that came from that, but I think in terms of applications, it hasn't been widely adopted or successful in its adaptation of that, right? That's just because human emotions are really complex, and it's very challenging to not just to predict, but to match that into what is ideal. Like maybe when you're sad, maybe you don't want encouragement. Maybe you just need to be, dwell on that for a little bit, and then you come out of it, right? So it's hard to recommend things based on the emotional state. Or what does that mean when you're sad? Does that mean can you learn better? Or does that mean you need a little bit of time and space? We are different too. So I think the individualized differences is also very difficult to map. But definitely in terms of in the field of AI and robotics, they're definitely talking about in terms of looking at just artificial intelligence. Now there's an interest in looking at artificial wisdom. And wisdom incorporates emotions, right? Emotional intelligence. It incorporates contextual awareness. It incorporates decision-making process, which, as you know, it's hugely emotionally driven. So there are a lot of research that are looking into that. The challenge, of course, always is funding, and how do you, once you have research on that, how are you going to put it to market and test it and make it popular to use, right? So these are challenges, as is this. So learning analytics, 5 minutes? Okay, I'm sort of towards the end. Thank you. What are some pros and cons? We already kind of talk about is, big data. You don't, just because you have big data doesn't mean you can measure. Just because you can measure everything doesn't mean you should. To able to differentiate, what is easy to access and measure, and what you really need, and what questions you're looking, what answers you're looking for, like asking the right questions, not just getting the easy answers for questions that are readily available, right? So I think there's a lot of that in the field that it's still, unclear. It's very, again, privacy is a huge issue. I can't remember, is it in Bloom? Do you remember Microsoft has a platform that was a huge fail in terms of collecting student data? It shut down a few years ago because parents, and this is in K-12 setting, huge concerns about student privacy and ownership of data. So that's a huge challenge. Since I only have a few minutes, I'm going to get to the mitigating the risks part. So here's some ideas. I think, okay, we talk about the pros and cons, and I always like to leave on a positive note and what we can do about it. We talk about quality assurance. We talk about just because content is everywhere doesn't mean we cannot put in some measures and audit and differentiate content. especially like when you use like VL. Is everything VL enabled? Is it based on sound pedagogical principle, based on learning theories, right? We still have to have some way of assessing that. Governance, we talk about there's no ethical guidelines and principles, so I think that's an area that we can all push and participate, especially in Canada. I think there's still space to join in for that conversation and push for a national agenda. Privacy by design approach. Have you heard of privacy by design approach? It came from the engineering field. It's also proposed by a Canadian. So she is from Toronto, and she, this came earlier back in the days when engineering was trying to establish itself as a field, but now it's very much part of the idea for software development as well. Basically, in terms of privacy, you have to start at the very beginning to think about that and not as something at the end and say, oh, now what are we going to do about privacy issue? So start from the very beginning to incorporate that into your design. Give learners ownership of the data. Always be transparent and open and tell them what this is about and what data they're collecting and get consent. And diversity of thinking, I always drive this point home. Like, when you design learning, when you design any products that are tech-driven, don't just get 20 software engineers in the room. Get people that have background in social policies, get people that have backgrounds in linguistics, get people with backgrounds in psychology, because we talk about emotions, we talk about learning and content, we talk about many other aspects of subjects and topics that we need to think about that from a different angle. Any other thoughts before I wrap this up? Any other things that you want to clarify or add to? So if not, I would leave you with some resources and references, and connect with me, please. So thank you. You guys have been great. I really enjoyed the conversations, and I see you guys over lunch.